The Russian army has broken through the defensive line in the Zaporizhzhia direction. Under the cover of fog, there are many Russian occupiers. The situation in Pokrovsk has become critical in the city. The attack on Crimea destroyed the largest oil depot. The peninsula is left without gasoline. Russians have had their mobile internet cut off until the so-called special military operation ends. Putin is in a panic and is demanding a meeting with Xi Jinping. China is completely refusing Russian oil. Ukraine was shocked by the results of the Nord Stream sabotage investigation. Western aid is now in question. Kyiv is planning to cut off Moscow's power. Flamingo missiles are already loaded. Hello, my name is Anastasia Dmitrovskaya. Right now, I'll tell you the main news, but first please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose each other on YouTube. Unfortunately, we have bad news from the front. The Ukrainian Armed Forces defensive line in the eastern part of the Zaporizhzhia region has shifted. This was reported by Bild's military observer Julian Robka. He claims that over the weekend, the Russians captured Rybino, Solodkoye, Novoye, and reached the outskirts of Ravnopoli. And after the fall near Spenovka, it seems there are no longer any defensive positions or Ukrainian troops left that could slow down the advance of Russian forces, who have covered 8 kilometers and have no intention of stopping. Although the controversial future head of the assault troops, Valentin Manko, claimed the day before that everything was fine there. Sad news about a breach of the border in another section of the Kharkiv region was reported by the founder of the special unit Kraken, Konstantin Nemechev. In
the area of Belogor in the Kharkiv, China, the enemy has once again crossed the state border. Along part of the border there is a so-called buffer zone. It's about 5 kilometers wide, where neither our troops nor the enemy have a permanent presence. Russia is actively taking advantage of this. In addition, the enemy has recently made some advances in Vovchansk itself. We need to act and strengthen our defenses while we still have an army. And
this is already Pokrovsk, around which heavy fighting has taken place recently. And unfortunately, in this footage, Russian troops have allegedly entered the city, hiding from drones in the fog. This was later confirmed by the military as well. Some of them
were unable to enter Pokrovsk under the cover of fog, but to this day, the access road is strewn with corpses and burned-out motorcycles.
However, where they did enter, that's where they fell. The occupiers who broke into the city were eliminated. Unfortunately, not all of the Russians were destroyed. About 300 Russian soldiers are already in Pokrovsk. This was reported by the 7th Airborne Corps. The Financial Times also reports that Pokrovsk is on the brink due to a critical shortage of Ukrainian Armed Forces soldiers. And the advance of Russian units in this area threatens to turn it into a springboard for a new offensive. But as they say, misfortunes never come alone, and now there is another terrible and widespread problem among Ukrainian soldiers at the front. Because of drone strikes, the evacuation of the wounded is being delayed, and medics are reporting outbreaks of gas gangrene. This is a terrifying infection that destroys muscles and kills almost instantly. Just so you understand, such injuries haven't been seen since World War II. Russia is a year behind schedule in capturing Pokrovsk, which was supposed to happen back in November 2024. This is being reported by the media. It is noted that despite their numerical superiority, the Russians were unable to break through the defenses quickly. However, even now, Moscow is concentrating troops and new drones around Pokrovsk, throwing more and more manpower into the devastated neighborhoods. Ukraine is entering its 4th winter of war. The publication writes that Kyiv's ability to withstand further Russian invasion will depend on 3 fundamental factors: material resources, people, and determination.
This winter could be decisive. Russia is producing more missiles than ever before, while Ukraine's damaged power grid is no longer able to supply electricity to the entire country. If Russia is able to accelerate its gains, possibly due to a combination of Ukraine's defensive lines failing and a decrease in the population of key centers near the front, it may set a course to force Ukraine into submission by 2026.
Additionally, experts emphasize that Putin's strategy is to seize 7 regions. 4 have already been annexed, plus Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, and Odessa regions. Subjugation of Kyiv through economic pressure and the complete absorption of Ukraine. The publication notes that Ukraine still has the opportunity to buy time to put pressure on Russia, but it cannot resist indefinitely. The Kremlin will only change its behavior under real economic and military pressure. One cannot help but admire the courage and heroism of the Ukrainian soldiers. They are holding the front and standing up to a huge horde that vastly outnumbers them. That's why I urge everyone to support the armed forces of Ukraine. If you can't do so financially, write them words of support in the comments. And now the memoirs of an ordinary Russian soldier, literally a second before meeting our drone. On social media, footage is being shared of an occupier recording a video, pouring out his soul about how hard things are for him and that despite it all, he hopes to survive. Well, anyway, see for yourself.
No communication, nothing. There was absolutely no food available, no clean water to drink, and truly nothing at all for quite a while. It was a 5 for the command staff, meaning the situation was extremely difficult and challenging for those in charge. So many corpses. It's probably been a week already. I'm really hungry. There are a lot of corpses, so many. The leaves have fallen, there's nowhere to hide. There isn't. Where can I run? How can I hide? Honestly, I really hope I survive.
A Russian came to kill, but he was killed. His mother cries and moans. What's happening in the world? It's unclear why, for what reason. After all, he came to kill, but he was killed. As a result of special operations, a strike was carried out on the Guard oil depot in temporarily occupied Crimea. Drones hit the pumping station on the territory of the oil depot. This is already the third successful strike on the facility in less than a month, and the second in just the last 3 days. And these are already shots from Saratov. There, as a result of a drone attack, an oil refinery caught fire. Also in Volgograd, due to the attack on the Saratov oil refinery, the airport was closed for several hours. Meanwhile, in Russia, unidentified drones are attacking one of the largest refineries, Orsknefteorgzintes, which is located more than 1,000 kilometers from Ukraine. This was reported by Russian media. I definitely like this kind of news. Read the comments under the previous episodes. I see that many of our viewers are watching from Kazakhstan, Moldova, Europe, and even the States. We Ukrainians are very grateful for your support and proud that we have such a reasonable audience. Let us know in the comments under this episode as well which country you're watching from and whether people there support our fight against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments, and for now, we're continuing because the most interesting part is still ahead. Mobile internet has been cut off for Russians until the end of the so-called special military operation. And the first lucky city to experience this was Ulyanovsk. According to Russian journalists, the shutdown has been implemented not temporarily but on a permanent basis, and it does not depend on air raid alerts or specific attacks. The reason is a decision by the regional authorities to expand so-called security zones around facilities connected to the special operation. Officially, this is being done, just listen to this, to combat Ukrainian drones that might use mobile network signals for navigation. There are no official maps of the jamming zones. They've been classified. Nevertheless, the restrictions have already affected residential neighborhoods, office buildings, shopping centers, and social institutions. Personally, I'm not surprised. I'm sure that soon the internet will disappear not only in Ulyanovsk. The United States wants to remove references to Ukraine's territorial integrity from the UN resolution. This is reported by Kyiv Post, citing sources familiar with internal discussions at the UN. The publication writes that this initiative was put forward by the administration of US President Donald Trump. Allegedly, they want to remove from the UN resolution not only the language affirming Ukraine's territorial integrity, but also the statements condemning the Russian occupation of Crimea and other regions. In December of last year, the United States, along with 77 other countries, voted in favor of this resolution. Now, according to sources from Denmark, Washington is allegedly seeking to remove the language about Russia's occupation of Crimea and descriptions of the worsening human rights situation in the occupied territories. Two sources claim that the US wants the resolution to be presented in a broader format under the title War in Ukraine, and also without references to territorial integrity or aggression. This is
yet another example of how Washington is moving away from Ukraine's key interests at a critical moment in diplomacy. If these formulations are removed, the signal to Moscow will be unambiguous. The US is no longer leading the defense of the international order.
Reportedly, diplomats from several European countries are trying to persuade the US to change its position before the vote. The Third Committee of the General Assembly, which deals with human rights and humanitarian issues, is expected to consider the resolution in the coming weeks. Western diplomats unofficially see all this as part of an effort to reduce references to Russian aggression in multilateral formats.
It's not about the terminology. The point is whether the world will continue to recognize the Russian occupation as illegal or will start to accept it as a given, said one European diplomat involved in the negotiations.
What do you think about this? Write your thoughts in the comments. One of the largest Chinese refineries, Nanchang Petroleum, has refused to purchase oil from Russia due to American sanctions. This was reported by Reuters. This refinery previously purchased Russian oil on a regular basis. However, according to expert agencies, a number of recent Western sanctions on Russian oil supplies have led Chinese state oil companies, as well as some Indian refineries, to avoid buying it due to concerns over secondary sanctions. It is noted that Yanchang Petroleum is one of the largest oil refineries in China, with a processing capacity of 348,000 barrels per day. But that's not all. Indian refineries are also massively refusing Russian oil for December deliveries. This was reported by Bloomberg. The publication reports that the 5 largest Indian oil refineries, which accounted for 2/3 of Russian oil imports this year, have not placed a single order for Russian crude for next month. Usually, deals for next year's deliveries are generally closed by the 10th day of the current month. See? This shift happened after President Trump doubled tariffs on all Indian imports to a substantial 50% in August, and then imposed sanctions on Russia's 2 largest producers, Rosneft and Lukoil. Well, this is just the beginning. Putin's Nord Stream gas pipelines are once again on everyone's lips, and German investigators have announced the results of their 3-year investigation into the pipeline explosions that occurred in September 2022. We will talk about the findings of the investigation and how it has split Europe into 2 camps. Nord Stream 2 is purely an economic project.
The investigation into the Nord Stream explosions is gaining momentum and threatens to undermine European support for Ukraine. This is reported by the Wall Street Journal. On September 26, 2022, the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines were destroyed on the floor of the Baltic Sea in neutral waters. At that time, both pipelines were not operational, but they were filled with technical gas. NATO called the incident sabotage, and Russia's FSB opened a criminal case.
Everyone clearly understands and recognizes that these were, without any doubt, acts of terrorism. But at the same time, everyone also realizes and is aware that some very serious and influential Western figures, individuals who hold significant power, have something important to hide. And they really, truly do not want this investigation to be conducted in a way that is genuinely and completely objective, fair, and impartial.
Initially, the investigation was started in Germany, Denmark, and Sweden. Subsequently, the countries stopped their investigations. The investigation concluded that they had no grounds to initiate a criminal case, and the case itself does not fall under their jurisdiction.
This investigation was conducted in a fairly traditional manner, and the investigators concluded that they could not accuse anyone of this. They had no evidence. So for us, the case is closed.
Germany continued the investigation.
We want to discuss this issue. It's not worth speculating. I can only say that we are very interested in clarifying this matter.
German investigators adhere to the version of an explosion allegedly organized by Ukrainians. According to them, the goal was to reduce Russia's oil revenues and its energy ties with Germany. In total, investigators believe that 7 people participated in the operation. 4 divers, an explosives expert, and the captain of the Andromeda yacht.
German investigators are confident that they have identified the perpetrators. In Italy, a Ukrainian citizen, Serhiy K., was arrested. A special forces unit under his command allegedly rented the sailing yacht Andromeda to access the pipelines. The federal prosecutor's office mentions 5 more suspects. All of them are Ukrainian citizens, including 1 woman. It is believed that one of the perpetrators was killed in the war.
The decision regarding Kuznetsov was made by the Italian appellate court. Initially, the court of first instance denied the German side's request for extradition. However, investigators appealed the decision and the appellate court sided with them. Kuznetsov is now awaiting a decision on Germany's request for extradition from Italy. The German police have already prepared a special plane to transport the Ukrainian to Hamburg.
Traces of explosives, intelligence data, and so on. We believe that this really did happen with the Andromeda, and that neither the CIA nor Russian intelligence services nor the Russian military are behind it. Many in Berlin are pleased that the investigations against unknown individuals are continuing.
On September 30th, Ukrainian citizen Volodymyr Zhuravlyov was detained in Poland. He was wanted under a European arrest warrant. In October, a court in Poland decided to refuse the extradition of the suspect to Germany and ordered his immediate release. My
client is not guilty. He has not committed any crimes either on German territory or to the detriment of Germany. Since the prosecution first asked him this question, my client has consistently maintained that the accusation is abstract and incomprehensible. This position remains unchanged.
According to the German investigation, Kuznetsov coordinated the work of the saboteurs while Zhuravlev sailed on a yacht to the pipeline, dove underwater and planted explosives.
What are the German authorities trying to achieve with this? And whose interests are they protecting? Does the property of the Russian state corporation Gazprom really deserve protection? Is it really the case that, in such a situation, those responsible should be held accountable?
According to statements from Germany, the decisive piece of evidence was a grainy black and white photograph taken by a road surveillance camera. Allegedly, it shows the face of the Ukrainian diver. Warsaw considers Zhuravlev a hero who destroyed a crucial source of income for Vladimir Putin's war machine. Judge Dariusz Lubowski stated that for Germany, the case has political overtones.
These actions were not unlawful. On the contrary, they were justified, rational, and fair. They cannot be considered terrorists or saboteurs because by defending their homeland by all means, they are weakening the enemy.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk also commented on Germany's investigation. We
believe that the real problem was the construction of Nord Stream, not its destruction. A Polish court refused to extradite to Germany a Ukrainian suspected of blowing up Nord Stream 2 and released him from custody. And that was the right decision. The case is closed.
According to Wall Street Journal journalists, the decision of the Italian court regarding Kuznetsov's extradition could complicate relations between Ukraine and Germany and turn the Nord Stream case into a diplomatic crisis.
Politically, we firmly stand on the side of Ukraine. Russia has been waging a terrible, aggressive war against Ukraine for 3 years now. We are on Ukraine's side. But for me, it's important that Germany is a state governed by the rule of law and that we consistently investigate crimes committed within our jurisdiction.
Putin's German friends, the far-right Alternative for Germany party, have launched a campaign demanding a reduction in aid to Ukraine. This year, that same party celebrated the birthday of the Russian dictator Putin. Before that, they demanded the expulsion of Ukrainian refugees from Germany. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is counting on American President Donald Trump to save him from defeat in the upcoming elections. This was reported by Politico. The publication writes that after his trip to Washington, the Prime Minister of Hungary boasted that the US would provide his country with a kind of financial shield to help withstand pressure from the EU. Orbán
hinted at a potential and serious threat of Brussels freezing funding due to Hungary's violation of the rule of law principle.
Hungarian media report that Trump and Orbán may have agreed on a currency swap between the central banks of the two countries, and Politico calls this, quote, a Budapest rescue package. At the same time, the publication notes that despite Viktor Orbán's statement about a financial shield from the United States, there is still no confirmation of any official agreements between Washington and Budapest. Politico also noted that representatives of the White House and the U.S. Treasury Department have not yet commented on reports of possible financial agreements between Washington and Budapest. What do you think? Did Trump and Orbán make any deals with each other? Write your thoughts in the comments, we'll definitely read them.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Ukraine does not leave the barbaric attacks on its energy sector unanswered. For every strike on our facilities, there are equally painful retaliatory strikes on the energy sector of the aggressor country. Russians need to get used to living without light and heat, as the retaliatory attacks will only intensify. And while Ukrainians have already adapted to blackouts over the past 3 winters, for Putin's subjects this is something new, and winters in Russia are both long and cold. November 9th.
The Ukrainian Armed Forces struck the Voronezh thermal power plant. After the strike, electricity disappeared in several homes and then came back. The Voronezh thermal power plant is one of the largest suppliers of thermal energy in the region and provides it to 4 districts of the city.
It happened right before my eyes. I had just stepped out onto the balcony. Right over there. Apparently along the power lines. No, well, I heard 3, but they're saying 4. In
Belgorod, this incident was attacked, leaving tens of thousands of residents without power. The governor of the region, Vyacheslav Gladkov, stated that the damage is very serious.
As a result of last night's rocket attack, there is significant and serious damage to the power and heating supply systems in the city of Belgorod last night. But our energy workers, as always, are heroically trying to cope with the task at hand. They are now diligently working to carefully restore everything that was damaged and destroyed by our enemies, making sure to repair all that was lost.
A day earlier, Ukrainian drones struck energy facilities in Saratov, Engels, and the Volgograd region. Power outages were also recorded there. With massive drone and missile attacks, Russia is trying to plunge Ukraine into a blackout. In turn, the Ukrainian army is delivering symmetrical strikes on Russia's energy sector. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the authorities are ready and will not only defend the infrastructure but also strike back in response.
What will happen with the electricity? Today, it's hard for me to say. We will be ready for any retaliatory challenges. We work on this every day. We will defend, we will fight. The Russians must know that step by step we will increase the production of everything so that they also feel what we feel. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine. In
2025, Russia is seeing a trend toward a growing electricity deficit. As of October of this year, the shortage of capacity in the power grid reaches tens of gigawatts. This was reported by the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine.
Due to demand from industrial, residential, and municipal consumers exceeding the total generation of all power plants, as of October of this year, the shortage of capacity in the power grid has already reached 25 gigawatts. Despite attempts by the REF government to introduce at least some measures to stabilize its energy system, such as monetary compensation or discounts on electricity bills for voluntarily reducing consumption during peak hours, as well as disconnecting consumers who do not require guaranteed power supply, the growing electricity deficit points to a systemic crisis in the Russian energy sector. The Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine.
In addition to wear and overload, systematic strikes by the Ukrainian Armed Forces are also affecting the Russian energy system. If Ukrainian strikes even partially damage Russian thermal power plants, this will cause significant problems for Russia's energy sector. The Ukrainian Armed Forces have already brought a blackout in southern Russia 60% closer.
Strikes by the Ukrainian Armed Forces are gradually knocking out high-voltage substations, which make it possible to transfer electricity from the region. If thermal power plants are also destroyed, then they will face a much more difficult situation than we do. Alexander Karchenko, director of the Energy Research Center.
Not only Russian regions, but also Moscow are suffering from Ukrainian drone attacks and power outages.
And this actually has very serious consequences.
It has a very serious, not just propagandistic significance directly for the Kremlin. Let me remind you that one of the reasons for launching the so-called special military operation was the issue of guaranteeing the security of the Russian Federation itself. At least that's how Putin and his inner circle explained it. We are now seeing how the war is coming directly to Moscow. And not just Muscovites. We see that the geography of Ukraine's drone attacks is expanding. Ukrainians have long since gotten used to and adapted to power and heating outages. But for Russians, this is an unexpected surprise. So it's time to start stocking up on matches, candles, and firewood.
These kinds of videos are now actively spreading on TikTok and other social networks. And in them, there's supposedly a Ukrainian soldier who says he doesn't want to die and is crying.
I want to die. Well, I'm only 23 years old, you know. Help me.
But all of this is fake. The video was created using artificial intelligence. And yes, I agree, it looks convincing, and for unprepared people it might even seem like it's a real video. But no, this is the work of artificial intelligence under the direction of Russians. Right now, they are practically flooding the media space with these kinds of fake videos and photos. And here are a few more examples. Fake videos of missing servicemen from the 60th Missile Brigade. In these videos, their wives are supposedly talking about their husbands. Or here's another example. Here, in a fake video generated by artificial intelligence, it's as if grandmothers and grandfathers are complaining about the military. The content repeats the typical Russian narrative that the armed forces of Ukraine use civilians as human shields or place their positions among the homes of peaceful residents. And here's another vivid example of how Russia uses artificial intelligence not to misinform Ukrainians and sow panic. In this fake video, it's as if a Ukrainian armed forces soldier is talking about the complete encirclement of Kupiansk by Russian troops. The Center for Countering Disinformation explains how to recognize that such videos are fake and generated by artificial intelligence. First of all, these videos often lack synchronization between the audio and the movement of the lips. Also, in this particular video, the supposed soldiers place the stress incorrectly in the word Kupiansk, and such fakes are typical of Russian propaganda. Their goal is to sow panic among Ukrainians, discredit the armed forces, and create distrust toward the military command. So stay vigilant and don't fall for Russian propaganda. The hysteria over Poseidon and Burevestnik in the Russian propaganda studios isn't dying down, it's only gaining momentum. And besides that, the Skabeevs and Popovs have found a new enemy. And it's not Zelensky and not Trump. In the latest fits of Putin's media lackeys. Coming up in our story.
This week, Russian propaganda has outdone itself again, both in terms of absurdity and the sheer density of nonsense per square meter. For example, in the studio of the country's chief TV preacher, Solovyov, it's thunder and lightning once again.
We can all see what's happening right now. There are active strikes being carried out against our oil refineries. I have just one question. Are we ever actually going to start paying attention to this?
This time, the reason for universal grief and righteous anger was that Ukraine, despite everything supposedly already destroyed, continues to regularly strike Russian oil refineries.
No, I get it. Maybe the brilliant idea is to turn off mobile internet and then suddenly nothing flies anymore. I get that the brilliant idea is to implement a carpet defense. After which, suddenly people can't fly during vacation season and end up sitting in airports. That really helps a lot. I just don't understand what exactly it helps with. And
on one of the propaganda shows, they introduced a hero from the front lines to the audience. A man who looked more like a character from a nightmare than a soldier with a cheerful smile talked about how he approached killing children and civilians with creativity.
As long as you have imagination, you can do absolutely anything you want. They booby-trapped books, they booby-trapped toys. They scattered those electronic cigarettes laced with poison.
Meanwhile, across the boundless expanse of Z propaganda, yet another military expert appears, his eyes full of confidence and a hint of terror. Inspired, yet somewhat deflated, he predicts that Russian army losses in Pokrovsk will be comparable to, if not greater than, those in Bakhmut.
The thing is, in Pokrovsk, we still haven't completed the encirclement, purely from a geographical standpoint. And that's why we're forced to push them out, meaning we have to fight urban battles. And the losses there are very high, of course, on both sides. For us, they are comparable to Bakhmut.
In other words, piles of bodies for the sake of capturing a couple of streets and a ruined train station. Also this week, the Orthodox propaganda school has been enriched with a new teaching. The Bishop of Skopinski and Shatsky Peterim declared that suffering, it turns out, is actually a joy for the Russian person.
For us, this is joy. Sorrow for us is bliss, not the absence of sorrow, not overindulgence, not joy, not laughter.
Merriment, laughter, and in general signs of life, according to him, are an unacceptable luxury.
And the Lord says this, "Woe to you who laugh now, for you shall weep." Our ancestors understood very well where their joy was, where their happiness was, and in general, where the meaning of life lay. It is up there in heaven, not here on earth. Here on earth, we have nothing but sorrows.
Just look at how, with a familiar smile on their face and a mad fire in their eyes, Russian TV once again threatens the whole world with nuclear weapons, presenting it as if it's not the end of civilization at all. And
we will see the hazel tree bloom and finally Poseidon Sarmat. How beautiful. Why will you finally see how beautifully the storm petrel flies over the gray expanse of the sea?
But here the smile clearly disappears from their face. In the joy over the great return of the domestic auto industry, Russia presented the new Niva. A certain pride in import substitution and yet another reason for patriotic stories.
Niva, please, I'm really begging you, tell me I just imagined it. Tell me that's not actually yours. 30 kilometers on the odometer.
Across the Russian expanse, yet another preacher of traditional values made a name for himself live on air. Roman Antonovsky, a zealous Z-monarchist, professional obscurantist, and self-proclaimed Orthodox thinker, suddenly couldn't recall either the date of Christ's birth or the name of his father.
By the way, what was the name of Jesus' father? Jesus' father was the Lord for us. The name of Jesus' father. But who raised him? Who raised him? Who raised Jesus? For us, Jesus is the Son of the Lord and the Virgin Mary. You're a Christian, you're a believer, you're regularly on the Spaz TV channel, you tell everyone else they should go to church. Here's a simple question for you, the answer to which my 3-year-old daughter knows, because by the way, she was born. By the way, when was Jesus born? Well, there's some date. So when was he born for us? Well, he was born 2025 years ago. No, the date. Well, the month, since the birth of Christ.
So, a person who lectures the whole nation every day on how to properly love God, the Tsar, and the tank, turned out to be unable to name even the most basic things from the Bible. And
right now, the story of a displaced woman from the Donetsk region. The woman tells how the occupiers came into her yard with a grenade, and after all the horrors she had to endure, she made a principled decision to switch to the Ukrainian language, but she wasn't able to leave the occupied village right away.
I spoke Russian in 2014, when they came into my yard with a grenade and said, "We came to liberate you." I switched to Ukrainian. I supported Ukraine, everyone knew it, and I was given a warning. Every day I sat, looked at the road, and cried. I couldn't take it anymore.
How do you like our news? Let us know what we should change to become better. We will definitely take it into account. And in the meantime, give this video a like to support what we do. And be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our next episodes. See you!